My name is Irene Willett. I'm 32. 5 years ago, my older sister told our parents I had quit medical school. It was a complete fabrication. That single lie was enough to erase me from my own family. They cut off my number. They skipped my residency graduation. They weren't at my wedding. For 5 years, I wasn't anybody's daughter. Then last month, my sister was wheeled into the emergency room, unconscious and bleeding out. The trauma team called for the surgeon on duty. When the doors opened and my mother saw the name stitched on the white coat walking toward her daughter's gurney, she grabbed my father's arm so hard it left bruises. Before we get into it, if this story hits home, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. And drop your city and the local time where you're watching from. I always like knowing who's out there with me tonight. Now let me take you back. Fall of 2019. A kitchen table in Hartford, Connecticut. The last time my father ever looked at me like he was proud. There were 2 girls in the Willett house, but only one who ever really counted. My sister Monica is 3 years older than me. She came out performing. School plays, student council, the kind of girl who could charm any adult at any dinner party. My parents, Jerry and Diane, were straightforward, hard-working people who cared about 2 things above everything else: how things looked and doing what you were told. Monica gave them both, effortlessly, every single day. I was the quiet one, the kid buried in a biology textbook at Thanksgiving while Monica held the whole table captive. I wasn't a troublemaker. I wasn't difficult. I was just not seen. There's a real difference between being forgotten and never being noticed to begin with. Here's a small memory that says it all. 8th grade. I qualified for the state science fair. The only student from my school to make it. Same weekend, Monica had a community theater show. Guess where my parents went? I came home with a 2nd place ribbon, and my dad glanced at it and said, "That's nice, Reenie." He never once asked what the project was about. He never did. I told myself it didn't matter. I poured everything into school instead. Grades, AP classes, applications. If I couldn't be the daughter they paid attention to, I decided I'd be the daughter they couldn't ignore. And for one brief moment it worked. The day I got into Oregon Health and Science University's med program, 3,000 miles from home, something shifted. For the first time in 18 years, my father actually looked at me. He said 5 words I'd waited my whole life to hear. I'll get back to that. First, you need to understand what my sister did the moment the spotlight moved off her. The acceptance letter showed up on a Tuesday in April, the same weekend Monica happened to be visiting. She was 22 then, working a mid-level marketing job in Stamford. A fine life, a fine job. Fine was Monica's ceiling, though she'd never admit that to herself. My dad read the letter out loud at the table. His eyebrows lifted. "Oregon Health and Science," he said slowly, like he was testing the words. "That's a real medical school." Then he looked at me and said, "Maybe you'll actually make something of yourself, Reenie." It wasn't much of a compliment, but it was the closest thing to one he'd ever given me, and I held on to it like air. My mom called her sister that night. Then 2 neighbors. "Irene got into medical school, can you believe it?" Her voice had a pitch in it I'd never heard aimed at me before. Real, unfiltered pride. At dinner, I glanced at Monica. She was smiling, but only with her mouth. Her eyes were doing something else entirely. Calculating, recalibrating. I didn't understand that look yet. I thought she was just tired from the drive. That week, Monica started calling me constantly. "How's the packing going? Who's your roommate? What's Portland like?" She memorized every name, every detail I mentioned. I actually thought my sister was finally seeing me, that maybe getting into med school had unlocked something real between us. I was wrong. I was handing her ammunition, one grateful phone call at a time. 3rd year of medical school is when everything came apart. My roommate and closest friend was a woman named Sarah Mitchell. She'd grown up in the foster system with no family of her own, and she was the reason I made it through 1st year. Once, during a brutal exam week, I called home and my mom said, "Can't talk right now, Monica's having a rough day." It was Sarah who sat with me on our apartment floor that night and told me, "Their loss. Now get up. We've got cadavers to memorize." That August, Sarah was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. No family, no support system, just me. I went to the dean's office the next morning and explained everything. He approved a formal caregiver leave of absence for 1 semester. All documented. My spot held for a January return. I moved into Sarah's spare room. I drove her to chemo. I held her hand in the oncology ward at 3 in the morning when the pain got so bad she couldn't breathe. I called Monica to tell her, still believing, somehow, that she was the sister she pretended to be. I told her everything. Sarah, the leave, the plan to come back in spring. Monica's voice turned syrupy. "Oh my God, Riini, I'm so sorry. Take all the time you need. I won't say a word to Mom and Dad. I know they just worry." 3 days later, she called them anyway. I wouldn't learn the full shape of what she said until 5 years later, when it all came undone in the last place any of us expected. But the damage was immediate. The call came at 11 at night. I was in a plastic chair beside Sarah's hospital bed after a bad reaction to chemo landed her overnight. My phone lit up. My father's voice was flat and cold. "Your sister told us everything. The dropping out, the boyfriend, all of it. Dad, that's not. Don't." Monica showed us proof. "Messages." "What messages?" "Dad, I'm literally at a hospital right now, taking care of my friend. Monica said you'd say exactly that. She said you'd have a story ready." My mother got on the line, shaking. "How could you lie to us for a whole year, Irene?" "Mom, please listen. I filed an official leave of absence. I can show you the paperwork. I can give you the dean's number." "Enough," my father cut in. "Don't call this house again until you're ready to tell the truth. You've embarrassed this family enough." The line went dead. I sat on that hospital floor for 20 minutes while Sarah's 4 monitor beeped behind the curtain. My screen still showed the call length. 4 minutes and 12 seconds. That's how long it took to erase me. 20 minutes later came a text from Monica. "I'm sorry, Riini. I had to tell them. I couldn't keep your secret anymore." She wasn't sorry. She just executed the cleanest strike of her life and signed it with a broken heart emoji. I was 3,000 miles from home with $46 in my account, and I had just become nobody's daughter. I need you to know I tried. Over the next 5 days I called my parents 14 times. The first 3 went to voicemail. By the 4th, my father's number was blocked. My mother blocked me 2 days after that. I sent 2 emails. One short, one long, with my official leave paperwork attached. The dean's direct line, Sarah's oncologist's name. Every piece of proof a reasonable person would need. No response either time. I mailed a handwritten letter, priority, from Portland. 5 days later it came back marked return to sender, unopened. I recognized my mother's handwriting on the envelope. I called my Aunt Ruth, my father's younger sister, the only person in that family who'd ever treated me like I mattered just as much as Monica. Ruth called my dad that same night and called me back 40 minutes later, her voice heavy. "He told me to stay out of it, sweetheart. Said you'd made your bed." She tried to explain the leave of absence. He hung up on her too. 5 days, 14 calls, 2 emails, 1 letter, 1 intermediary. Every attempt blocked, ignored, or returned. And here's the part that really broke me. None of this was new. It was just the loudest version of a pattern that had followed me my whole life. Every science fair they skipped, every recital forgotten, every time Monica's version of events won out over mine without question. This was simply the final, ugliest chapter of something that had been building for years. On the 6th day I stopped calling. Not because I gave up, because I finally understood they'd made their choice a long time ago. Monica had just given them permission to stop pretending otherwise. Sarah died on a Sunday morning in December. Quiet. Just the monitor going flat and pale winter light through the window. I was the only one in the room. Nobody in my family knew because the one person I'd told, Monica, was too busy protecting her lie to care that the reason for my leave had just stopped breathing. I planned a small funeral. 6 people came. I read a eulogy to a chapel that could hold 60, most of the pews empty. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't shattered. I'd already been crying for 3 months straight, and there was nothing left. That night, alone in our apartment, I opened my laptop to the spring re-enrollment form and just stared at it. Then I found something tucked inside Sarah's copy of Grey's Anatomy, a running joke between us. A yellow sticky note on the pancreas chapter, her handwriting shaky but deliberate. Rude of it to pick a card. Finish what you started, Irene. Become the doctor I know you are. And don't you dare let anyone, especially your own blood, tell you who you are. She'd written it weeks before she died. She knew she wouldn't be there to push me when I needed it most. I filled out the re-enrollment form that night. 2 choices in front of me: crumble or climb. I chose to climb. Not for revenge, not even for my parents. For Sarah, and for the person she believed I could be. I went back that January with no family safety net at all. I took on extra loans, picked up a part-time research job, ate more cafeteria leftovers than I'll ever admit to. Medical school doesn't care about your personal life. 12-hour rotations don't get shorter because you cried in a supply closet at 2 a.m. So I stopped crying and started working like my life depended on it, because in a way it did. I graduated on time. Nobody from Hartford showed up. I matched into a surgical residency at Mercy Crest Medical Center, a busy level 1 trauma hospital back on the East Coast. That's where I met Dr. Margaret Thornton, Maggie, chief of surgery, built like steel wrapped in a lab coat. She became the mentor I needed and, honestly, the mother figure I'd lost. 3rd year of residency, I met Nathan Caldwell, a civil rights attorney doing pro bono work at a nearby clinic. Calm, dry sense of humor, and the first person I told the entire story to who didn't flinch or try to fix it. He just listened. Then he said 4 words. "You deserve better." That was enough. We got married on a Saturday afternoon in Maggie's backyard. 30 guests. Nathan's father walked me down the aisle. I'd sent an invitation to Hartford. It came back unopened, same as the letter years before. Aunt Ruth was there, crying enough for 2 absent parents. After the ceremony, Maggie handed me a sealed envelope. "A nomination," she said. "Don't open it yet. You're not ready." I tucked it away without asking. 5 years passed. I became somebody they wouldn't recognize. Quick pause here. If you've ever had a family choose someone else's lie over your truth, drop a fire in the comments. If you think my parents are about to regret everything, type karma. Let's keep going, because what happens next, even I didn't see coming. Present day. I'm 32. Chief of trauma surgery at Mercy Crest. I've got a house in the suburbs with good morning light on the porch, a husband who still makes me laugh daily, and a golden retriever named Hippocrates, Hippo for short, who has never once judged me for eating cereal at midnight. It's a real life, built with my own hands, brick by brick. But there's a specific kind of ache that never fully goes away. It sits in the hollow space where a family is supposed to be. I don't cry over it anymore. I don't check for a Hartford area code. But every Thanksgiving there's a flash, counting plates, feeling an absence like a phantom limb. Aunt Ruth still calls every Sunday. She's my one thread back to that world. I never ask about them, but I listen when she volunteers something. Mom and Dad are healthy. Monica got divorced 2 years ago and sells medical devices now. An irony that isn't lost on me. Last week, Ruth's voice had something different in it. "Precious. Irene, there's something I need to tell you about Monica. Something concerning." Before she could finish, my pager went off. Trauma incoming. I told her I'd call back. I never got the chance, because what Ruth was trying to warn me about was already speeding down the interstate in a sedan about to run a red light. Within the hour, it would be lying on my operating table, bleeding out, with my parents in the waiting room and my name on the chart. I just didn't know it yet. Let me back up, because what Monica did wasn't a single lie. It was a campaign. Ruth had been feeding me pieces for years, carefully, like she was defusing something dangerous, one wire at a time. And the picture was worse than I'd imagined. For 5 years, Monica kept the story alive at every holiday, every gathering, playing the grieving older sister. "We don't really talk about Irene," she'd tell relatives, voice lowered, letting silence do the work. But she didn't stop there. She told our grandmother I was homeless. She told an aunt by marriage that I was in and out of rehab. She told our mother 2 Christmases ago that she'd tried reaching out and I was the one who refused contact, that I was the one who cut them off. The genius of it, and I use that word with real disgust, was that Monica didn't need our parents to forget me. She needed them to believe I had abandoned them. That way their grief felt justified, and she remained exactly what she'd always been, the loyal daughter, the only one who stayed. She wasn't protecting them. She was protecting her position. There was one more piece Ruth eventually told me that made the whole picture darker. Something Nathan had actually been sitting on for 2 years. Over coffee one morning, he set his mug down carefully. His tell for delivering bad news. 2 years ago I got a call from HR at your old hospital. Someone using a fake name was asking about your employment status, whether you'd ever been disciplined, whether your credentials were even legitimate. He'd traced the inquiry. The IP address came back to Hartford. She was trying to find something, I said. Anything, Nathan confirmed, to keep the story alive, to prove you were a fraud. She found nothing because there was nothing to find. She didn't just lie once and move on, I told him. She's been hunting me. He put his hand over mine. That's not sibling rivalry, Irene. That's something else. He was right. Monica hadn't told one lie. She'd built an entire structure of them, load-bearing walls reinforced year after year. Every holiday story, every whispered rumor, every fake inquiry was another brick. I could have blown the whole thing open right then. I didn't because life was about to do it for me. Publicly, brutally, and with more irony than I could have written myself. Thursday night, January, 3:07 a.m. The pager tore me out of sleep. Nathan stirred. Hippo lifted his head from the foot of the bed. The screen read, Level 1 trauma. VC single female 35. Blunt abdominal trauma. Hemodynamically unstable. 8 minutes. I was dressed in 4 minutes, driving in 6. The roads were empty, wet. That particular shade of black Connecticut gets in January. I ran the case through my head the way I always do. Mechanism of injury, likely organ involvement, surgical plan. Probable splenic rupture. Possible liver laceration. I'd done this surgery 100 times. I badged into the trauma bay. My team was already assembling. I grabbed the intake tablet from the nurse's station and swiped to the incoming chart. Patient, Monica Willett. DOB March 14, 1990. Emergency contact. Gerald Willett, father. I stopped walking. For 2 or 3 seconds the hallway noise pulled away like a tide, and I wasn't a surgeon anymore. I was a 26-year-old on a hospital floor in Portland, phone still warm in my hand, listening to a dial tone. My charge nurse, Linda, touched my shoulder. You okay? I'm fine, I said. Prep Bay 2. Page Dr. Patel, I want him on standby. The ambulance doors cracked open moments later. Monica was strapped to the stretcher, unconscious, oxygen mask fogging with shallow breath, blood on her shirt. Behind the paramedics, running, came my parents. My mother looked like she'd aged a decade overnight. Robe on, slippers on the wrong feet. My father was in a flannel thrown on in a panic, face the color of old paper. That's my daughter, he shouted at the triage nurse. I need to talk to the doctor in charge. The nurse, Carla, someone I'd worked with for years, put her hands up. Sir, family needs to wait in the surgical waiting area. The trauma team is already here. The chief is handling this personally. The chief, my father repeated, grabbing at her arm. Get me the chief now. Carla glanced through the glass at me, gowned and gloved, badge visible. Her eyes went wide for just a fraction of a second. I gave a small shake of my head. Not now. Sir, she said, composed again. The chief is prepping for surgery. You'll be updated as soon as possible. The waiting room is this way. I heard my mother whispering prayers as they were led off, my father turning back to look through every window he passed. She's all we have, he kept saying. Please, she's all we have. I heard every word through the partition, as if I had never existed. In the scrub room I gave myself 30 seconds. Water running hot over my hands. My own warped reflection in the steel mirror. Part of me wanted to walk out and hand this to Patel. Let my parents owe their daughter's life to a stranger instead of me. Cleaner. Simpler. But there was a woman on that table with a ruptured spleen and a grade 3 liver laceration, losing blood faster than we could replace it. She had 30, maybe 40 minutes before this ended badly. And the best surgeon in the building was me. Paged Patel directly. I have a conflict of interest. The patient is a family member. I'm disclosing it now, documenting it in the chart. If my judgment looks compromised at any point, you take over. No hesitation. Understood, Chief, he said. I had Linda note the disclosure. Everything by the book. Then I pulled on fresh gloves and walked into the OR. My sister's face on the table. Bruised, smaller than I remembered, thinner, worry lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago. For a few seconds she wasn't the woman who wrecked my life. She was just a body that needed saving. That's exactly what I needed her to be. Let's go. Scalpel. That's how long it took to repair what the steering column and a red light had torn apart. Ruptured spleen removed. Grade 3 liver laceration. Closed layer by careful layer. Bleeding from 2 mesenteric vessels. Clamped, cauterized, controlled. I barely spoke beyond what was needed. Suction. Clamp. Retract. My hands moved the way years of training had built into muscle memory. Steady, fast when speed mattered, slow when precision mattered more. The residents watched closely, the way they always do, and I felt their attention sharpen during the tricky part of the liver repair. I didn't falter. I couldn't afford to. At 6:48 a.m., I placed the last stitch. Her vitals were stable, blood pressure normal, output clear. She was going to live. Dr. Patel pulled his mask down. Irene, that was flawless. Want me to talk to the family? No, I said, peeling off my gloves. This one's mine. I caught my reflection in the mirror again. Same face, same badge. But something had shifted. For 5 years I'd been the daughter who vanished. Now I was the surgeon who just pulled her sister back from the edge. Those two facts were about to collide in a waiting room 40 feet away, in front of my entire night shift. Fluorescent hush, 7 in the morning. A television murmured weather to nobody. My parents sat rigid in the center row, sleepless, terrified. I walked in still in scrubs, mask down around my neck, badge in plain view. Dr. Irene Ouellette, Mbé's chief of trauma surgery. My father stood first like always. Doctor, how is she? Is Monica? He stopped. His eyes dropped to my badge, rose to my face, dropped again. I watched recognition move through him like a physical tremor, starting in his hands and climbing to his jaw. My mother looked up half a second later. Her hand shot out and clamped down on my father's forearm, a grip that would leave 4 bruises shaped like fingertips. 5 seconds of silence held 5 years. I spoke first, calm and clinical, the same voice I use with every family in that room. Mr. and Mrs. Ouellette. I'm Dr. Ouellette, chief of trauma surgery. Your daughter sustained a ruptured spleen and a grade 3 liver laceration. Surgery was successful. She's stable, currently in the ICU. You can see her in about an hour. Mr. and Mrs. not mom and dad. I watched that land. My mother took a step toward me, arms lifting, a sob breaking through. Irene. Oh my God. Irene. I stepped back half a step. Polite. Unmistakable. Her hands hung in the air, then dropped. You're a doctor, my father said, voice like gravel over concrete. I am. You're the chief. I am. But Monica said. What exactly did Monica say? He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I could watch the machinery behind his eyes trying to reassemble 5 years of certainty crumbling in real time. My mother was crying now, not quietly. We thought you dropped out. We thought. She told you I dropped out. That I had a boyfriend with a drug problem. That I was homeless. That I refused to contact you. My voice stayed level, no shaking, no tears. I'd rehearsed this moment in the shower, in the car, in the dark before sleep, 1,000 times over. I never thought it would happen in surgical scrubs under fluorescent lights. None of it was true. Not one word. My father tried the old redirect. This isn't the time or place, Irene. Your sister's in the ICU. I know. I just spent 3 hours and 40 minutes making sure she survives it. So yes, Dad, I'm aware of where she is. He had nothing left to say. For the first time in my life, my father, a man who always had a verdict ready, had absolutely nothing. The silence did what 5 years of letters and calls never could. My mother reached for a chair to steady herself. The letters. You said you sent letters. 2 emails with my leave paperwork attached. 1 handwritten letter, mailed priority. You sent it back unopened. I recognized your handwriting on the envelope. She pressed a fist to her mouth. My father stared at the floor. I called 14 times in 5 days. I asked Aunt Ruth to talk to you. You told her to stay out of it. I wasn't accusing anyone. I was reciting facts, and facts don't need volume. Just then Linda appeared. She didn't know the full story yet, but she had hospital business. Sorry to interrupt, Dr. Willett. The board chair saw the overnight trauma log. Wanted to pass along the physician of the year committee's congratulations on tonight's outcome. She said it like routine business. She had no idea she'd just dropped a second bomb. My mother looked at me, swollen-eyed, mascara gone. Physician of the year. It's internal recognition. It's nothing. I turned to Linda. Thank you. I need to check post-op vitals. I walked toward the ICU, spine straight, steps measured. I didn't look back. But I heard my mother's ruined whisper trail after me. Jerry, what have we done? And for the first time ever, my father said nothing. Because silence, finally, was the only honest thing he had left. 4 hours later, room 6. Monitor beeping steady, morning light through the blinds. Standard post-op check, except nothing about this was standard. Monica's eyes were open, glassy from the anesthesia, but open. She blinked at the ceiling, then tracked sideways to me. She squinted at my badge. Read it again. The color drained from her face the way it does in patients who've just been told a bad prognosis. Irene. Her voice was sandpaper. Good morning, Monica. I'm your attending surgeon. You had a ruptured spleen and a grade 3 liver laceration from the accident. Surgery went well. You'll make a full recovery. You're a doctor. Not a question, a reckoning. I'm chief of this department. Have been for 2 years. I watched her go through the same sequence my father had. Just slower, filtered through morphine and dawning fear. Confusion, disbelief, fear. And then the flicker I'd seen my whole life. Calculation. Even lying in a bed with my sutures holding her liver together, Monica was already trying to figure out how to spin it. Irene, listen, I can explain. You don't need to explain anything to me. I nodded toward the glass, where 2 wrecked faces stood watching. You need to explain it to them. I updated her chart and left without another word. I didn't stay for what happened next, but the whole ICU floor did, because the walls weren't soundproof and neither was the truth. Quick pause. What do you think Monica told our parents once they walked in? Does she finally come clean? Does she double down? Or does she play the victim again? Drop your guess below, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time, because this is where it all comes apart. I heard what happened from Linda, who heard it from the ICU nurse, who heard it through the glass. If you guessed she played the victim, you know my sister. The moment our parents walked in, Monica started sobbing, hard enough to pull at her stitches and spike the monitor. Mom, Dad, you have to believe me, I never meant for it to go this far. I was scared for her. My father stood at the foot of the bed, barely controlled. Irene is a surgeon, Monica. Chief of trauma surgery at this hospital. I didn't know that. She said she sent letters, emails, 14 calls. She asked Ruth to step in. My mother's voice went flat. Is that true? She's exaggerating, you know how. Ruth tried to tell us, my father said, and this time his voice cracked, not from grief, but from the structural collapse of everything he'd believed for 5 years. 2 years ago Ruth said Irene was in a surgical residency. And you told us she was lying, just stirring up drama. Ruth doesn't know the whole story. Then what is the whole story, Monica? My mother was nearly screaming in an ICU hallway. Monica, backed into a corner with IVs in both arms and my sutures in her abdomen, did what she always does. Pivoted from defense to offense. Fine, she's a doctor. Good for her. But she abandoned this family. She never called because we blocked her number, Monica. My father's knuckles went white on the bedrail. Because you told us to. The monitor kept beeping. For maybe the first time in her adult life, Monica had no script left. Aunt Ruth arrived at 9:45 that morning. I'd called her from the scrub room not to weaponize her, but because Monica was her niece too and she deserved to know. Ruth came prepared. 5 years of silence will do that to a woman with a filing system and a long memory. She didn't sit. Didn't hug anyone. I've waited 5 years to have this conversation, she said, and I'm not waiting one more minute. She pulled out her phone, a folder she'd labeled Irene Proof. Screenshots of every desperate email I'd sent. My signed leave of absence letter with the registrar's seal. My re-enrollment confirmation. A photo from my residency graduation cap and diploma. Ruth the only family member standing next to me. And here, Ruth said, swiping to a text thread. This is from Monica, sent to me 4 years ago. She read it aloud. Don't tell Mom and Dad about Irene's residency. It'll just confuse them. They're finally at peace. The room went still. Monica stared at the ceiling, jaw set, but the calculation was gone from her eyes, replaced by something I'd never seen on her before, the look of someone who's run out of rooms to hide in. You told me to stay quiet for the family's sake, Ruth said, looking straight at her. But this family never had peace. It had a 5-year blackout. She turned to my parents. And you too, you let this happen. Not because you didn't love Irene, but because loving Monica was easier. Nobody argued. There was nothing left to argue with. My mother sank into a chair, scrolling through Ruth's phone, reading my old emails one by one, lips moving silently. She stopped on the last one, the one I'd sent the night before my residency graduation. Mom, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I graduated today. I wish you were here. I never stopped being your daughter. She doubled over in the chair. My father stood at the window, back to the room, shoulders shaking. Ruth told me later it was the first time she'd ever seen her older brother cry in 62 years. Not at their own mother's funeral. Not when his business nearly folded. Never. He cried now, silently, facing the parking lot while the monitor beeped behind him. Monica had stopped talking entirely. Her eyes fixed on a point on the ceiling. Nothing left to perform. No audience left who'd believe her. 35 years of a carefully built persona lying in pieces on the linoleum. You missed her wedding, Jerry, Ruth said quietly, spent now. Nathan's father walked her down the aisle. Do you understand what that means? My father didn't turn from the window. But he spoke. For words cracked down the middle. What have we done? Not a question. Conviction. I came back that afternoon at the end of my shift, 22 hours since the pager first went off. My parents were still there. Course they were. My mother stood the second I walked in, face swollen. Irene, baby, I'm so sorry, I'm so. I held up a hand, gentle but firm. I hear you. Believe you're sorry. But sorry is a starting point, not a finish line. What I need right now is time. We want to make this right, my father said. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in one day. Then understand something. My voice was even. Not anger, just clarity, the kind that only shows up after you've burned through every other feeling. I'm not the girl you sent away. I'm not the girl who begged from 3,000 miles for 5 days straight. I'm someone who built an entire life without you. If you want in now, it happens on my terms. Not Monica's. Not yours. Mine. My father opened his mouth out of old habit, then closed it and nodded. Small, devastated. I looked at Monica in the bed. When you're recovered, you and I are going to talk. Really talk. Not today. Today you're my patient. I don't mix the two. I left with my spine straight, steps measured. I wasn't closing the door. But I was the one who decided when it opened, how wide, and who walked through. 2 weeks later, Monica was discharged, her incision healing, everything else not so much. I picked the location myself. A coffee shop halfway between her place and mine. Neutral ground. Nathan came too, sitting at a separate table pretending to read case briefs. He wasn't really pretending. Monica walked in looking hollowed out. Surgery and not eating will do that. The confidence she usually wore like perfume was gone. For the first time in my memory, my older sister looked exactly her age. She sat, wrapped her hands around a cup she never drank from, and stared at the table. "I'm not here to yell at you," I said. "I'm not going to list every lie. You know what you did. What I want to know is why." Long silence. Long enough for a barista's shout to echo off the walls. Then quietly. "Because you were going to be everything I wasn't, and I couldn't handle it." "That's honest," I said. "First honest thing you've told me in 10 years. I'm sorry, Irene. I know you are. But sorry doesn't give me back the years. It doesn't put Dad at my wedding. It doesn't unsend that box Mom mailed back to me like I was dead to her." She looked away, eyes wet. Real tears this time. I know the difference now. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. "I also called your medical school. I tried to get them to revoke your leave. I told them you'd faked the caregiver paperwork." The shop hummed around us. "Your dean wouldn't listen to me," she added. "He protected you." "He didn't protect me, Monica. He believed the truth." "That's not the same thing." I laid out the terms I'd mapped out the night before with Nathan, sitting on the kitchen floor with Hippo's head in my lap. "I'm not cutting you out completely. But there are conditions. You tell the truth, the whole truth, to every relative you lied to. Every aunt, every uncle, every cousin who spent 5 years thinking I was in rehab or living on the street. You correct every story. In writing. An email to the whole family list. And Ruth confirms everyone gets it." She nodded, small, defeated. "I will." The following week I met my parents separately at their kitchen table. The same table where my father had once read my acceptance letter. The same table where Monica used to smile with just her mouth. "I'm open to rebuilding," I told them. "But you both go to family counseling. Not for me, for yourselves. You need to understand why you believed a lie about your own daughter and never once picked up the phone to check." "We don't do that in this family," my father said, jaw tight. "That's exactly why we're here." My mother put a hand on his arm. "Jerry, please." Something behind his eyes cracked. Not open, not yet, but cracked. "Fine." I stood to leave, then turned back. "One more thing. Nathan's father walked me down the aisle. That happened. You can't undo it. But if you want to know your future grandchildren, start now. Not with grand gestures. With consistency. Apologies expire. Boundaries don't. That's the difference between sentiment and structure." 1 month later, the Physician of the Year Gala. 200 people in a hotel ballroom. String quartet nobody was really listening to. Name tags on lanyards. I wore a simple black dress. Nathan looked like he'd been born in a suit. Maggie sat beside him with a faint smile of someone who'd been quietly engineering this moment for years. "This year's honoree," the MC announced, a surgeon whose clinical excellence, composure under pressure, and commitment to her patients set a new bar for this institution. Dr. Irene Willett, Chief of Trauma Surgery. Applause. A standing ovation from the surgical staff who'd actually watched me work. Kept my speech short. 5 years ago I almost quit. Not because I couldn't do the work, because I'd lost the people I thought I needed to keep going. What I learned is that the people you need aren't always the ones you're born to. Sometimes they're the ones who choose you. I looked at Maggie, at Nathan, at my team. Then toward the back of the room, where Ruth had quietly arranged 2 seats. My parents, my mother in a navy dress she'd probably bought that same week, my father in a tie he clearly hated, hands folded, faces caught somewhere between grief and pride. "And sometimes," I said, "the ones you're born to find their way back late. But they find it." My mother covered her mouth. My father stood. The applause swallowed the rest. Afterward, my father found Nathan near the coat check. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I should have been the one to walk her down that aisle." Nathan, gracious as always, shook his hand. "With respect, sir, you should have been a lot of things. But we're here now." Monica sent it on a Wednesday night, to all 47 names on the family list. Ruth confirming delivery. I read it the next morning over coffee. Nathan sat down without a word. 3 paragraphs. No excuses. Just facts. She'd lied about me leaving medical school, fabricated evidence, maintained the deception for 5 years, deliberately kept our parents from learning the truth. She ended it with, "Irene never abandoned this family. I made sure they believe she did. That's entirely on me." The replies came in waves. An aunt who'd repeated Monica's rehab story at a book club 2 years earlier called Ruth in tears. A cousin sent Monica a single line back. "I don't know who you are anymore." Our grandmother, 89, who'd stopped asking about me because Monica told her it was too painful, called me directly. "I have never in my life been lied to so thoroughly by my own blood," she said, voice paper-thin and furious. "Forgive an old woman for not seeing it." "There's nothing to forgive, Nana," I told her. "You were lied to. We all were. Nobody organized a boycott. No angry group text. But the trust Monica had spent 35 years stockpiling was simply gone. You could feel it in the silences after that email, in replies that never came, invitations that quietly stopped arriving. Nobody punished her. They just stopped believing her. For someone who built her whole identity on being believed, that turned out to be punishment enough. My parents started family counseling in February with a therapist named Dr. Reyna. Calm, direct, the kind of woman who doesn't let anyone dodge a question. My mother took to it fast, finally naming the weight she'd carried for years. The first time Dr. Reyna called it what it was, enabling through silence, my mother cried for 40 minutes straight. My father struggled more. He sat, answered in as few words as possible. Dr. Reyna eventually told him his need to always be right. His refusal to ever revisit a decision once made had been the load-bearing wall holding this whole disaster upright. Monica supplied the lie. My father's pride cemented it into place. 3 weeks in, my mother mailed me a handwritten letter. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "I failed you," she wrote. "Not just when I believed Monica, but every time I chose peace over fairness. Every time I let your father's temper decide what was true. Every time I saw you standing quietly in a doorway and told myself you were fine, because admitting otherwise meant admitting I wasn't brave enough to fight for you." I read it at the kitchen table. Hippo asleep on my feet, Nathan pretending not to listen from the next room. I didn't cry. But I held on to that letter a long time. Then I opened the drawer where I keep the things that matter. Sarah's card, my returned letters, the wedding invitation that came back unopened, and placed it inside. Same drawer, different side. Progress isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just rearranging what you carry. Monica started her own therapy too, separate from the family sessions. We've had 3 coffee meetings since, each one short, stiff, and slightly more honest than the last.